A former pet cemetery in Surrey could be dug up for new houses. Can the project be stopped?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. About 100 people have been forced from their homes after a huge fire hit an apartment building in Coquitlam early this morning. Crews say flames were climbing from floor to floor. And as Joel Ballard reports, it's not clear when or if people can go home.
It was a long, cold, challenging night for residents and firefighters alike. Emergency services were called to this apartment complex around 1:45 in the morning. Many of the residents awakened by the sound of the fire alarm.
I saw like flashes of red in the window, so I went to check it out, and it was a massive fire going on.
68 firefighters from Coquitlam, Poco, Port Moody, and Burnaby responded. When they arrived, firefighters say flames and smoke were billowing from the back of the building, where 4 units were fully engulfed.
We had floor, basically ground level to 4th floor flames. It was quite a sight on the back end there.
Some residents were trapped on the balcony and had to be rescued by a ladder. The 2nd floor collapsed in one area and a firefighter fell through. He sustained a minor injury to his ankle. He was taken to hospital and later released. Some residents were treated for smoke inhalation. Many were forced to evacuate their homes in the cold of winter, like Max Moseni, who lives next door to the units that caught fire.
Last night was terrible. It's just like smoke comes to our face, and we just take our life and run. And because we are afraid it comes to our home too.
There's frustration today. Moseni hasn't been able to return to his unit, where his family had to leave their 2 kittens. The family's medication is still inside too. I spoke with some residents on the other side of the building who say they were far enough away that they didn't need to evacuate. Meanwhile, Coquitlam Fire says about 100 people were displaced.
Originally I called a couple of transit buses, and they came in and kept everyone warm, so it was cold by night.
Fox says emergency support services and the city of Coquitlam have set up a reception area, providing food and temporary shelter support for anyone who can't return home. Fire investigators are on scene, and city staff and engineers are working to determine whether it's safe to return. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Coquitlam.
It was a final resting place for beloved animals, but a proposed development in Surrey could see a former pet cemetery dug up for new housing. And as Liam Britton reports, those against the project may not have the law on their side.
Skipper, Sailor, Piggy, Fido, Brandy, Sheba, and perhaps hundreds more. They've been resting for decades at a former pet cemetery in Newton. But for how much longer is the question Christian Schumacher is asking.
To have somebody come and tear them out of the ground, and essentially say they're going in the trash.
The cemetery is proposed for redevelopment into 3 houses. Schumacher says it's wrong to dig up a place where pets were buried for 40 years.
When one passes away, people mourn, I can't say just like a human, but they still mourn. It's still a part of your life that's gone.
David Corns has spent the last few years voluntarily cleaning up the land. It's been badly overgrown after the cemetery closed down in 1992. He explains that he's a Celtic revivalist.
Celtic Druidism is having respect and respecting nature and all the animals and things like that. And that's one of my major motivations.
Over 2,000 people have signed Schumacher's petition to stop the proposed redevelopment. And while they may have plenty of emotion and treasured memories, and not to mention the signatures of 2,000 people on a petition on their side, the law may not be. You see, cemeteries for human burial are quite heavily regulated and protected, but pet cemeteries, not really at all.
The sad reality is that there aren't really any legal protections for pet cemeteries in British Columbia.
Rebecca Breder is a lawyer specializing in animal law.
Unless there is something that legally ties a pet cemetery to the land, the next developer or property owner can just dig up the cemetery and do what they like with the remains.
The city, in a statement, says the project conforms to zoning, and it will only need staff's okay, not council's.
People have buried their beloved pets there with the expectation they're staying there, that that's their forever home.
Still, one councillor says she's concerned about it.
If people have concerns about this, they should write into the planning department at the City of Surrey and express their concerns. Quite frankly, I would like to see this area made into a neighborhood park.
Turnberry Development says they owned the land for about 30 years and have now sold it to a home builder. It says 3 people have claimed their pets' headstones for removal, and those requests have been accommodated. Breder and Schumacher say there should be rules protecting pet cemeteries from redevelopment. Staff say the houses could be approved in months. Liam Britton, CBC News, Surrey.
The fallout over the resignation of Selena Robinson continues to grip Victoria. Robinson has left the NDP caucus to sit as an independent MLA and is accusing her former party of tolerating anti-Semitism within its ranks. Last month, she resigned from cabinet after saying modern Israel was founded on a, quote, crappy piece of land with nothing on it. She spoke with our Michelle Elliott on BC Today.
When we're seeing anti-Semitism, just appearing in civil society, regular protests, hearing from people in the Jewish community that they were afraid that Holocaust survivors were saying it's happening again. I kept bringing this to various members of caucus, and I was really met with nothing.
The Premier says he and his caucus are feeling hurt and sad about Robinson's resignation.
As a leader, for me, this is a real day for examination of what the opportunities were where I could have potentially intervened and addressed some of the concerns Selena had. I had a meeting with her just a few hours before she resigned from our caucus. I was checking in with her. How are you doing? How's your relationship with colleagues? How's the community feeling? How's your work going with the Muslim community? And she didn't feel safe raising these issues with me. And so for me, that's a message that I need to examine how I work with our team. Because Selena's voice was an important one in our caucus. She had an experience of the October 7th attacks that nobody else in our caucus had.
The opposition BC United, meanwhile, says it was open to welcoming Robinson into its party, but claimed the NDP made a series of mistakes. Leader Kevin Falcon has called on the Premier to investigate and look inwards.
The patronizing attitude of both the Premier and his House Leader, suggesting as they did that the House Leader said, I hope she finds peace, and the Premier saying she's hurting and carrying a lot of pain. This is a common trope against women, of course, because the Premier and the House Leader are implying that she's too emotional and hopefully she'll go find some peace, as opposed to responding to the accusations and allegations that she had made against their government.
BC United MLA Michael Lee, meanwhile, describes Selena Robinson as the only ally the Jewish community can count on in the legislature. BC's outgoing Environment Minister, George Heyman, who is also Jewish, disputes that. He says while he recognizes Robinson's own experience, he doesn't share her belief the NDP government is tolerating anti-Semitism within.
My experience is that our caucus and our cabinet is deeply committed to fighting anti-Semitism, to opposing hatred, and I have found them to be personally supportive of me on an ongoing basis at any time since October, when they have felt that I might be feeling strong emotions about what is going on. They've regularly checked in with me. They've regularly expressed their commitment to fighting anti-Semitism.
Both Robinson and Heyman have announced they won't be running for re-election. Tens of thousands of British Columbians are being caught up in a doctor's dispute. At stake is access to vision-preserving treatment. The CBC's Nicole Out explains from Prince George.
Christina Watts is still able to draw and paint, crucial for the Prince George artist and art teacher. But a recent diagnosis of a life-altering retinal disease has put that at risk.
I have like a big round circle. It was a gray mass in the center of my eye, and all I could see was the peripheral.
To preserve her sight, Watts needs monthly eye injections. She's one of more than 20,000 British Columbians in the Provincial Retinal Diseases Treatment Program.
Since I've been getting the eye injections, it's kind of cleared the gray mass so that I can see color.
In February, Watts and other patients got a worrying letter from their retinal specialist. It says, due to a cut in provincial compensation, the program will be ending at the end of March. Watts says paying for the treatment out of pocket would cost her hundreds or even thousands of dollars each visit.
Their thoughts, because I have kids, right? So where does that money go to? Well, I would rather just give up my eye and pay for my kids, post-secondary education.
The province told CBC News that the changes are coming about at the request of the BC Society of Eye Physicians and Surgeons. But the Association of BC Retinal Specialists is suing that organization, alleging the proposed fee changes are unfair. The retinal specialists allege the society is trying to punish a small group of professionals for earning too much from the retinal disease treatment program. In a statement to CBC, the Society of Eye Physicians and Surgeons deny those allegations and say they will be responding through the court process. The conflict also has Health Minister Adrian Dix weighing in.
Regardless of what happens, people will continue to get service. They'll continue to get service for free. We're, of course, determined and concerned that letters were sent out that suggested otherwise.
Despite the reassurance, Watts questions how patients like her will get their injections.
I don't think it is fair that we're stuck in the middle of this as a patient. I mean, we're in for vital care, and this, squabbling is not helping anything.
It leaves people in limbo, waiting to see what comes. Nicole Aud, CBC News, Prince George.
While driving by the Victoria Golf Club, a woman claims a golf ball flew through her open car window and hit her in the face. She's now responded with a lawsuit. Evelyn Moore is suing Kane Wyatt, the player who hit the ball, the golf club, and the District of Oak Bay. She claims she experienced headaches, nausea, and chronic pain since it happened and has been forced to shorten her work hours. None of those accusations have been proven in court. This defense lawyer says to do so, Moore has to prove negligence.
Test would be, did the golfer act as a reasonable golfer, right? And sometimes accidents happen, even when somebody's acting reasonably. And if that's so, the golfer would not be responsible.
He says the same standard applies to the golf club and the district. There is a sign installed on the side of the road that warns passersby of errant golf balls. March 31st is an important day for Ukrainian citizens. They have until the end of this month to come to Canada on an emergency visa. Those already here have until that day to file paperwork to extend their stay for 3 years. Georgie Smythe has more on those trying to make Canada their home.
Thank you. A new life in Canada begins with paperwork.
Bye, have a good day.
The emergency visa program that brought more than 200,000 Ukrainians to Canada is ending this month. Anyone approved needs to be in the country before March 31st, and Ukrainians are arriving in their thousands.
I come here because a program is finished, and I think it's important to do it because it's a really good change.
Worked very hard to
support groups like this church are noticing an uptick because come April 1st, it'll become harder for Ukrainians to travel here.
It puts us in line with any other individual from many other countries in the world. So it is a very different, it's not a slight change, it's a very big change.
Andrei Batitsky and his wife Katerina Bondarenko arrived in Canada 4 months after Russia invaded their country.
We just build everything to have a good life in Kharkiv. In one moment, everything is destroyed.
They're still adjusting to the pleasures and pressures of life here.
Take a look at my credit history. You understand how it's tight. Yeah, it's really tight.
I'm a makeup artist.
Working several jobs while trying to extend their visa for another 3 years.
I will try to apply for a PR card because, when you have a permanent resident status in Canada, it looks like you are human.
Some Ukrainians have an easier path to permanent residency if a member of their family is already a citizen. Immigration lawyers say for most, options to stay longer are limited.
You just have to be mindful that there is always a chance that after 5 years or 6 years in Canada, you might have to go home. Yeah.
For this young couple, it's a possibility difficult to imagine as war grinds on. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Madavi joins us for a first look at the weather, and we have more on the winter wallop that's hitting parts of BC.
That's right. We've got weather warnings across much of BC, including the north coast, inland sections, parts of central BC, and the big one is here on the northern and western parts of Vancouver Island. Now, most models were suggesting that the storm would have already been hitting, but we're just starting to see it come in now, and for the most part, it hasn't been too bad just yet, although we are seeing some snow and it's some places heavier rain at some of those higher elevations on some parts of the island. But as you can see, we were expecting a lot more already, but it is not far from over right now. You can see that by tonight, we're going to start to see that by tomorrow night, we're going to see a lot of that rain spreading really across the island, although the worst of it is likely to miss parts of the South Island and us here in Metro Vancouver. So still going to be a rainy few days, but the worst of it is really hitting those more northern parts of the island as we continue to see this system roll through. If we look at exactly how much is going to come, keep in mind, this is just one model, so these numbers are more of a guideline, but Environment Canada is warning of up to 100 to 150 millimeters by Saturday morning. And so this is just the next 24 hours. You can see already some significant accumulations. Another 24 hours forward, already 100 millimeters on parts of that coast. And then another 24 hours forward, you can see just how much rain we're expecting on some of those areas. Now, it's not going to be all rain. There is some snow coming as well. And so we should be able to take a look at that here, but some snow for those higher elevations as well. And so we'll keep an eye on that and let you know what's coming as rain and what's snow later this hour.
Sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
It was once destined to be gutted and turned into a multiplex. But half a century ago, the Orpheum Theatre was saved. We're going to take you back in time and behind the stage today after this. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. Tensions between the Heiltsuk First Nation and Vancouver police continue more than 4 years after officers handcuffed a Heiltsuk grandfather and his granddaughter outside a Vancouver bank. We heard from the nation's chief today.
The official apology for this incident was supposed to take place in Bella Bella back in 2022. Is that right?
That's right, October 2022.
And what happened?
They didn't show up. And, so the ceremony didn't happen. It's a ceremony of the Heiltsuk Nation, and it's also one that other people can't stand in for other people, like the police board, being here. It does involve the people that were involved in the incident. So that ceremony, didn't happen.
When you say it didn't happen, I mean, the police board did head up to Bella Bella. Is that right? There were representatives from Vancouver Police there.
That's right. There were representatives here, but the apology ceremony didn't happen.
And that's because the officers who were actually involved, the officers who detained and handcuffed Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter, they were not there.
That's right. Yeah, they were not here. They didn't come up to the community, and so the ceremony, was not able to take place.
And if you had, for instance, senior officers or the chair of the police board or members of the police board, that's not good enough for you.
No, I mean it's part of our Indigenous laws and our traditional customs and our practices. It's a ceremony that involves the people that were involved in, and in this case, an incident. Mm-hmm. And it's not one where you can appoint someone to, stand in your place. It involves the people that were involved.
And so what kind of communication did you have with the police board after that, what was supposed to be that ceremony fell apart?
So there hasn't been any communication, so we don't know what their best efforts have been to compel, the officers to take part in the ceremony. We, don't know, it's been, virtually nothing, so, yeah. And that's really frustrating.
And did you ever get any kind of explanation as to why the officers weren't there?
No, we didn't. Yeah.
And so we don't know whether it's the officers themselves who don't want to attend or whether it's the VPD that doesn't want the officers to attend.
That's right.
Throwback Thursday, time to dive deep into our vast CBC archives. The Orpheum Theatre is a jewel in Vancouver's entertainment crown. It started life as a vaudeville and cinema, but in 1974 it was facing a destructive fate. The plan was to gut the place and put in a 13-screen multiplex. The city, though, had another idea for its future: renovate, rebuild, and open it up as a concert hall. Fast forward to 1977, 3 years after it was saved from the wrecking ball. Back then, we spoke with musicians and entertainers about what made the Orpheum so good.
But the beautiful sounds that will come from the stage will, I think, be a revelation to all Vancouverites.
Well, I believe this one is one of the best halls in the world.
What's your favorite hall? I think I like the one in Vienna, but it couldn't be duplicated today.
If it's a 10, what is this on a scale of 1 to 10?
9.9. I really like this hall.
You know, the Orpheum is the most beautiful theater in Canada. Bing Crosby told me that. Bob Hope. There's so many people who told me the very same story, that I'd never even been in such a more beautiful theater than the Orpheum.
So we thought we'd take a look inside 50 years later and get a sense of what was saved and some of the secrets. Caroline Chen takes us behind the scenes.
Hello and welcome to Vancouver's glorious Orpheum Theatre, the fourth theatre in the city to bear the name Orpheum. Hi, I'm Bill Ullman. I'm the president of the BC Entertainment Hall of Fame. We're in the Granville Street entrance of this grand old palace built in 1927. Now, the illusion here is that while the theatre looks huge and grand and majestic, there's only 25 feet of it built on Granville Street. And that's this entrance, which was enhanced with mirrors and lights and a high ceiling. So you felt like you were coming into the theatre with thousands of people. Most of the theatre is built back on Seymour Street, almost 3,000 seats, because Seymour Street was cheaper and the taxes on Seymour Street were cheaper.
And the Orpheum's celebrating a big anniversary because 50 years ago something big happened.
That's correct. 50 years ago, famous players who by then owned the property, and they were a movie distribution and exhibition chain. Famous players had decided that the economics of movie-going had changed. Theaters were no longer pulling in enough people to justify a single screen for almost 3,000 people. So they announced quite publicly that they were either going to turn the theater into a multiplex, so there'd have been 8 screens here showing the latest Star Wars movie, or else they were going to flatten it all together. At that point, the citizenry of Vancouver stepped up and said, absolutely not, this is our theater, our gem. And eventually the city of Vancouver said, okay, that's it, we'll buy the property. I have visions of them walking in on purchase day in 1974, going around, wow, we bought a theater, and it's a wreck. So they undertook a huge restoration of this entire building. The reason it's a gem now is because the city had the foresight to go ahead and really do a proper restoration. Good to see you. This is Tom Carter, board member of the BC Entertainment Hall of Fame and magnificent artist.
Okay, so the 1927 Wurlitzer, as Bill was saying, it's the last Wurlitzer that's in its original theater in all of Canada. So let's just say that we were going to accompany a silent film, Bill, sure. And there would be, say, a girl in her garden, like. And then, but something evil is brewing.
So when the Orpheum was originally built in 1927, many of the components were put together off-site, were carved off-site, like these seemingly and definitely solid stone columns, the handrails, the balustrades. These were carved from sandstone probably quarried on Gabriel Island on a lot a couple of blocks away from here and brought to the Orpheum by horse and buggy, because that's how you move things in those days. The Orpheum took about a year to complete. You couldn't put up a garage in the city of Vancouver now, just for the paperwork, in under a year. But these are nice and solid. As I've explained, the Orpheum architecture is fantastic, but it's a set. They're done by masterful craftsmen and architectural geniuses who knew how to build a great theater set. So here we are in the lower balcony of the Orpheum Theatre. And as you look around, you see screens that evoke Moorish and Baroque architecture. You see panels that are curved. You see a dome that is painted with the most beautiful mural. And you see a great grand chandelier that looks exactly like what they dropped on people in Phantom of the Opera. We don't drop this on anybody. It's too expensive. It's all Czech crystal. Looking up at the dome, which looks like a classic mural, probably done in the 20s. Is that what it looks like? Yeah. It was painted in 1974. So they got Tony Heinsbergen, who I think was in his 80s at that point, to consult on how to properly redecorate the entire room. And then Heinsbergen said, listen, that dome was always just gray. I really wanted to do a proper mural up there. Would you let me? And Merrick said, sure, we will. So Heinsbergen, I tell my audiences he lay on his back for 6 months, like the Sistine Chapel. He did not. He painted, I think it's 20 different canvas pieces in his studio in Los Angeles. They were affixed to the dome here. That sense of grandeur comes through, and the sense of history. This is by no means a museum. This is a living, working theater, and it's a place where you come to feel good. This is the roof above the theater seating area, above the house, as we call it. Watch this.
I can see the seats below.
That's right. We're standing right over top of the seating area. And what you see, this curved thing, is that beautifully ornate painted dome that you saw from the seating area below. And everything is suspended by wires. The Orpheum, yes, is a glorious, grand piece of architecture. It's a set. That dome might be an inch thick with a little bit of canvas applied to it as well.
What is the magic of?
Well, it's an emotional release for the audience. It's a connection, and that at the end of the day is the magic. It's that connection between artist, whether they're on celluloid or on stage, and audience that really does it for me.
Six people have been killed in Ottawa. A young man arrested and charged with first-degree murder. That story after the break.
Landscapes came about pretty naturally. I just started painting them, enjoying them. But the reaction I was getting from people when they were looking at them, they were telling me that it was very soothing. My sister, her name was Anna Howard. She was my best friend. And we lost Anna to depression 7 years ago. And she was a huge impact in how my work changed after the loss of Anna. I realized so many of us, and I knew before we lost her, that so many people are dealing with so much behind closed doors. And I wanted everything that I do to be somehow trying to quietly reach those people who need a little bit of love or need a little bit of calming in their life. I have quietly been doing things for so many years to try and let people realize what it is that I want to offer, and the fact that they came to me for something that they thought would be healing in a space. I was like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what I would want. It was my dream. Oh, she would have loved it. I mean, I think she does love it. I think she kind of has been pushing me along the way. Yeah, she was one of my biggest supporters, so she would have thought that it was so perfect. We can help people in ways that we don't actually have to physically be with them. So this is my little way of cheering people on.
A mother, her 4 young children, and a family friend have been killed in an attack in a townhouse outside Ottawa. The oldest child was just 7 years old, the youngest less than 3 months old. A 19-year-old man is now charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. The CBC's Nicole Williams has more.
A normally quiet suburban neighborhood in the city's south end, now dealing with a nightmare.
I saw a guy was sitting on the driveway and yelling. And so the police came and then they took him away. And then after that, so many police cars and ambulances were around 25 police cars were there.
Police found 6 people dead in this townhouse just before 11 last night. Newcomers to Canada, all from Sri Lanka. 35-year-old Darshani Delanthaka Aikanayake and her 4 young children, all between the ages of 7 and just 2 months old.
This one will undoubtedly weigh on the hearts of everyone for a long time.
The other victim, a 40-year-old man living with the family. The only survivor, Aikanayake's husband, who went to hospital with injuries. He's in serious but stable condition.
I can only imagine how difficult it is to witness such a terrible tragedy, and our emergency personnel deserve our support and gratitude for their work.
Police quickly arrested 19-year-old Fabrio De Zoisa, who appeared in court this afternoon, charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Police say he was an international student, new to Canada, also from Sri Lanka, living with the family. Police say he used an edged weapon to kill the victims.
Our investigators and forensic teams are working very hard to determine all of the facts and ensure justice is done.
As the investigation continues, the community now coming to grips with the horror of what happened.
I'm obviously in shock, and I can't explain it. It's tough.
Did you know them?
No, I didn't, but I'm seeing it, seeing the guys in their white suits and everything. It's more real now.
A memorial has been set up nearby so that neighbors can pay their respects. Police are asking people to stay away from the scene while they conduct their investigation. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Authorities have now shared the names of the 5 Canadians killed in a plane crash in Nashville earlier this week. They were all members of a family that lived in King Township, about 50 kilometers north of Toronto. The victims included Viktor Dutsenko, the pilot, his wife Rima, and their 3 children, David, Adam, and Emma. The children ranged in age from 12 to 7. The mayor of King Township described it as a devastating loss for the tight-knit community. The family's single-engine plane crashed and burst into flames near downtown Nashville Monday night. Shortly before it went down, Dutsenko told air traffic controllers his engine had shut down. He said the plane was too low and too far from the runway that had been cleared for him. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada has assigned an official to help American investigators look into the crash. An alarming number of South Asian business owners are being targeted by criminals for extortion, threatening them with shootings and arson. Mounties say this is happening here in BC as well as Alberta and Ontario, and believe these threats are connected to organized crime. Here's Jamie Strachan to break down how those threats are made and where that's leading investigators.
The car pulled up to the dealership in the dead of night.
So they parked the car over there, so this was closed, so they walked under the circuit.
3 men got out with guns and sprayed the lot with bullets, smashing windows, punching bullet holes in nearly a dozen vehicles. The owner, whose identity CBC News is protecting for his safety, discovered the damage the next morning.
I felt something under my shoes and I saw bullet shells. So I looked around, I saw more than 30-40 bullet shells all over the place.
Days before, there had been a threatening call to his business partner, demanding money.
We were trying to figure out if it's a real or not, if it's a prank call.
Right after the shooting, the threats continued.
A few hours later, we got a call again that now you saw the result, now get the money ready.
He reported it all to police, who told him to change his habits, even suggested hiring security.
When we go out, we need to look around, make sure there's nobody parked. We are minimizing our exposure in the society.
In Peel region west of Toronto, there have been 35 extortion attempts since October, targeting South Asian businesses, many involving violence.
The frequency and the cadence of these extortions is unprecedented.
Similar extortion attempts are emerging across the country. CBC News has cataloged dozens of cases since October. In Edmonton, drive-by shootings and more than a dozen arsons. In Abbotsford, BC, threatening letters sent to local businesses. In Peel, a task force made a handful of arrests, but the wider problem remains.
Would you agree with that premise that we're still kind of grappling with who's driving this?
We're developing a better understanding of where this is coming from, whether it is a single source, multiple sources, more local, or sort of more national or international.
Andrew says the use of the encoded WhatsApp and the emergence of copycats looking for a quick buck have made things even more difficult.
And there's multiple groups now doing this because it's such a relatively easy thing to do. It involves a phone call.
The RCMP has also formed a task force and have started connecting the cases between provinces.
So I can tell you that there's absolutely links to organized crime.
The head of the task force says the investigation is international in scope.
There's a lot of people out there providing what they believe is the reason behind why these extortions are occurring. And it relates to geopolitical issues, perhaps the government of India and so forth. Those are possibilities, of course, we're going to look at if that is in fact what is occurring.
Even if the gangster are here,
India-based journalist Jupinderjeet Singh has been covering India's gang culture for decades and says it's hard to pinpoint exactly where these calls are coming from and who's making them.
a lot of gangsters are operating from jails. So it is quite possible that they make phone calls from here to Canada. And why are they calling Indians in Canada only? Why not other countries? Because there is some local network there.
Police say these violent extortions have kept many victims silent.
We think that there's likely people outside of the jurisdictions already reported and within these jurisdictions who may be victims and have not yet come forward.
Some are simply choosing to pay rather than call the police.
I can completely understand that the level of fear and concern, but by paying, you're not making the problem go away.
For the car dealer in Peel, the threats continue. A few weeks after shots were fired, a man walked into one of his dealerships.
So basically, he called somebody on WhatsApp, put it on the speaker, and they were trying to say, we need money or we'll come shoot you in the daytime.
How much money are we talking about here?
They were asking for 100,000.
I spent some time with you. Your phone rings a lot.
Yeah.
You don't ever answer it anymore.
I only answer if I have the number saved. I don't answer unknown calls anymore.
Who knows who will be on the other end?
This crime wave won't be solved overnight. The head of the RCMP task force told our Jamie Strachan this is an emerging issue that will take time and resources to stop. It's not something he'll be moving on from in 6 months. Sweden formally joined NATO today at an official ceremony in Washington.
Russia will stay a serious threat to the Euro-Atlantic security for the foreseeable future. It was in this light that Sweden applied to join the NATO Defense Alliance, to gain security, but also to provide security. Ukraine is fighting bravely for its freedom, but they are also defending European freedom.
Sweden is the second country after Finland to join NATO since Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau welcomed the 32nd member to the Western Alliance. He also noted Canada was the first country to ratify Sweden's accession. More troubling information about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza is coming to light. A study commissioned by the UK government found damage to the territory's healthcare system is so extreme that even with an immediate ceasefire, it would take months to remedy the current situation. Margaret Evans has more and a warning some viewers may find images in the story disturbing.
The struggle to survive turns on many levels in Gaza. Here, in a Deir al-Balah health clinic, dialysis machines separate toxins from the systems of patients whose kidneys no longer can. But the treatments are cut short due to lack of water, and they can't stop the war outside, bleeding through the lives of so many Gazans. This woman tells a freelance videographer working for CBC News that she lost 4 children when her house was bombed. Outside, desperation on the ground is driving desperate measures from the sky. Airdrops from Jordan, Egypt, the United States. Britain's foreign minister says he knows it's not enough.
If we want to avoid famine, if we want to avoid disease, if we want to help people in Gaza, we need 500 trucks a day.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says to agree to a ceasefire would be to allow the Hamas militants who killed some 1,200 Israelis on October 7th to win and to abandon the hostages they still hold. A recent report commissioned by the British Foreign Office warns that Gaza's healthcare system is so ravaged that even with an immediate ceasefire, thousands of excess deaths would continue in Gaza for months.
And if the trajectory stays the same in terms of how much food people are getting, then our models project that the rates of acute malnutrition in children particularly would skyrocket and become really catastrophic.
The study looked not just at acute trauma, but at disease and underlying health issues no longer treatable because of the war. Hada al-Shafi was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019 and was treated at the one specialist hospital in Gaza. No longer there. May God support my kids, she says. I want to see them succeed, see my daughters get married. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Ocean temperatures are rising to record-breaking levels. After the break, why it's happening and how will it affect marine life?
There's mixed reaction to an announcement this week about a new fully electric Dodge Charger. It will be produced at the Windsor Assembly Plant beginning in the summer. Next year, an internal combustion engine version will be produced there. The owner of this Chevy Bolt EV isn't really into muscle cars, but at first glance, he's happy to see them coming on the market.
I think they fill a new segment, which is great. You know, it gives people more options for electric vehicles. You know, having an electric muscle car, I think, is a great thing, and just gives people more choice. So yeah, I was excited to hear about that, and obviously excited it's going to be built here in Windsor.
Well, I tell you, when I first heard the word electric muscle used in the same sentence, I didn't think those two words went together.
The owner of this Challenger muscle car is keeping an open mind, but he says it's going to take some convincing before he buys into the idea of an electric muscle car.
Internal combustion has been around for a long time, and we're obviously fans of the cars from the late 60s and early 70s. And to say the word electric is blasphemous to us. A V8 muscle car gives you that visceral feel that you can't get from anything else, especially not an electric. It may be quicker, but it can feel like you're inside a golf cart.
The electric Charger will come with the sound package called the Fratzonic Chambered Exhaust, but Dawson doesn't think it'll compare to the sound of his vehicle.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Dodge has probably put a button in there that you can turn that off, and I suspect the majority of owners will probably have that turned off.
CBC News is trying to verify whether the sound can be turned off. For right now, Dawson isn't ready to turn his back on the electric Chargers just yet.
I am very anxious to see, and I am anxious myself to get behind the wheel of some of the different iterations of it, and I will reserve my judgment until then.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Chatham.
Well, there's still snow on the ground in many parts of this big country. Our planet has been breaking heat records for months on land and in the ocean. Senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us what experts are learning about the effects of such extreme temperatures.
If this story sounds familiar, it's because it is. Month after record-breaking month, global temperatures continue to rise, making the climate crisis come into plain view, bringing record-breaking wildfires, heat waves, rainfall, and that's just on Earth's surface. Our oceans, which make up more than 70% of our planet, are also heating up. The Copernicus Climate Change Service found that sea surface temperatures in February reached an all-time high of 21.06 degrees Celsius, beating out last August's record temperature. While there is an El Niño event in the Pacific Ocean, which brings warmer water with it, it's just not enough to explain the anomalous temperatures, experts say. Scientists are particularly concerned about what these high ocean temperatures could mean for our delicately balanced ecosystems.
These marine heat waves can do a number on our marine ecosystems who are not ready for that long and that warm a water. So I'm worried about our coral ecosystems and bleaching. It's a dangerous game we're playing with our ocean.
And experts say it's unlikely that there's a single cause for the abnormally high temperatures, but rather say it could be a culmination of various factors that include El Niño and changes in the atmosphere.
It's going to take us a while to sort this all out. This data is surprising. We're trying to reconcile it with all the other things going on our planet, which we've upended in terms of its climate. And so it's going to take some time to really get to the bottom of why the Atlantic is warming. But we know overall, in the long run, we're heating up the planet in a big way, and we're going to keep setting these kinds of records every few years.
For now, all eyes are on March, as El Niño is expected to weaken further, and, hopefully, lower ocean temperatures. Nicole Mortellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
Science and climate specialist Darius Madavi joins us with the full forecast. Before we get to that, the impacts of these hotter oceans. You mentioned mass coral bleaching, is that right?
Yes. NOAA, the U.S.'s organization that keeps an eye on ocean temperatures and are really the foremost expert on coral bleaching events worldwide, are forecasting a mass coral bleaching event around the world in the next few months. And so that's why we're keeping such a close eye on how these ocean temperatures are shaking out. This is the Copernicus overview of those the surface temperatures in February around the world. You'll notice that across Canada we're warm. BC not doing too bad, mostly because we have been a little bit cooler than normal, particularly at the end of February, but we are expected to see a hot few months ahead. If we look at the ocean temperatures, you can see record-breaking by an incredible margin, and we have been for a year now, a full year of record-breaking ocean temperatures. In many places, the hottest ocean temperatures for February ever recorded. You can see here all these dark red areas. Those are the hottest temperatures recorded in the last 30 years, which are some of the hottest years we've seen. So this is definitely quite the event, but something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, especially in terms of that coral bleaching, because the corals aren't just habitat, they're also living themselves, but support the entire ocean ecosystem. Now, with that being said, also not some great news coming for BC as we see this system move in. Rainfall warnings, winter storm warnings, snowfall warnings, and a special weather statement for the lower mainland that we're keeping an eye on. We'll watch the system continue to roll in, bringing plenty of snow and rain across the province over the next few days. Now, we're not going to be as bad here in Vancouver and for the Greater Victoria area as some other systems that we've seen pass through, but for parts of the island and the north coast, going to be quite the system, quite serious in many places. If we zoom in here, we can watch that accumulation once again, and this time we'll layer that snow on top once this runs through. Again, a lot of rainfall, a lot spread over quite a few days, and if we layer that snow level on top, you can see plenty of snow for the mountains. Here in Vancouver, we may see a little bit of rain on some of those peaks, but freezing levels will drop again after tomorrow, so we should see some more snow again. The other thing to watch out for is those really strong winds on parts of Vancouver Island. So watching that as well, especially tomorrow afternoon. Now, in terms of the conditions across the province, plenty of activity, but for the interior, most of that is just a chance of what we're going to see, not really guaranteed. And then if we take a look at our 5-day forecast here in Vancouver, a little bit of snow tonight, especially those higher elevations, but quickly wiped out by the rain tomorrow. and then plenty of rain ahead as temperatures continue to rise.
How many times and ways can you say it's going to precipitate? Nicely done. Thanks,
Dan.
A Toronto man was shocked when an iconic bird of prey nested near his home. Now it's confirmed as the first documented bald eagle nest in that city. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Crystal, also known as Centered by Plants. We're a plant collector and business owner. Come check it out. I moved to Ontario in 2000. I'm originally from Jamaica and I'm currently living in Ajax. In my personal collection, I currently have about 60 plants. In my retail space, maybe about 3,000. When I started, I had a lot of the more common varieties that were easily accessible. And as I got into it and I met more people from the plant community, I got introduced to other varieties. I enjoyed seeking and sourcing rarer varieties. There was something about it, a bit of a thrill, right? The thrill of the find. That's kind of what pulled me into it. Come with me. In here, this is what I like to call my plant room. This used to be my living room, but as you can see, the plants have taken over. It gets the best lighting in the house, so it's only fitting for me to put my plants here. The plants here are from all over the world. Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines. So it's like we're bringing little parts of the world into our space. Here I have my philodendron jerry horn. As you can see, it has really nice long leaves, and as it matures, it gets these, beautiful lobe-like sections on it. So this is one of my favorites. This is a philodendron roué sap variegated. It has a bit of color and texture on it, and I like it because it gets really big. It's a bit of a beast, right? Philodendrons are known for having what's called extrafloral nectaries. You can see the crystal-like substances that it's producing. It gets really sticky. A lot of persons will see this and think that their plant has an issue, but it's really normal for philodendrons to have this substance. Next, I have my philodendron Calkins Gold. I'm pretty sure it got its name based on the color. As you can see, it has this beautiful yellowy orangey color on it, right? Starts off like this color and it matures into a deeper green color as it ages. This is my first Monstera Thai constellation. I got it as a really tiny plant. This one has been very enjoyable to grow because I've gotten the chance to see it mature in my care. Over here is one of my absolute favorite plants, my philodendron fleur de bronze. In their natural habitat, they like to climb. So as it matures, it attaches the roots to whatever substrate you provide. I like to use moss poles. This really encourages the plant to get larger leaves and to become this size. Here's another plant that I have growing on a moss pole. As you can see, the roots have grown through the moss pole and have gone down all the way to the floor. In its natural habitat, this is how they climb.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Calling all entrepreneurs, Dragon's Den auditions are back. On March 6th, attend a special entrepreneurial workshop at the Okanagan Regional Library, Kelowna branch. The open auditions are on March 7th at the Kelowna Innovation Centre, and Vancouver auditions are on March 9th and 10th at the CBC Broadcast Centre. For more information and to register, visit cbc.ca/dragonsden.
When you think of Toronto, skyscrapers, traffic, pavement, and nothing green probably come to mind.
But a new winged arrival is changing just that, making a home in the metropolis. The CBC's Patrick Swadden has more on bald eagles moving to TO.
Two swans frolic under the morning light along a Toronto waterway. But they're not the only majestic creatures in attendance. as 2 bald eagles survey the area from their new home.
It's incredible. There's no words to describe it. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Jules McCusker spotted the 2 birds of prey in December.
Well, the first thing I thought was that it wasn't possible.
Impossible because nobody's seen a nest in the city. While it's not abnormal to spot one of the iconic birds, the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority confirming to CBC News that this is the first documented bald eagle nest in Toronto.
The eagles have landed.
Duke Redbird, a good friend of McCusker, says the eagle's nest is a good omen.
It's a very sacred bird to us and represents so many good things, honor, honesty, charity, life, and all the things that are good.
And it's not just the cultural significance or importance to Indigenous communities. Scientists say a bald eagle nest in Toronto bodes well for the region's biodiversity.
The bald eagle wasn't historically doing very well. It was endangered for a long time.
John Sparrow with the Toronto Zoo says this was largely due to the hunting of eagles in the 1900s and pervasive use of an insecticide called DDT that harmed local ecosystems and caused eagle eggs to crack under any weight.
And DDT was banned in the 70s in North America, and we did see a drastic increase with other conservation efforts.
They are exploring new areas that they haven't explored in a while and then nesting there.
Drescher says climate change is also playing a role in the return, as water bodies abundant in fish, a typical eagle prey, have less ice. The TRCA adding, bald eagles have a low tolerance to contaminants, the nest suggesting that Toronto's aquatic ecosystem continues to improve. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
I know it's not Friday, but fun fact about bald eagles. Even though America considers them their bird, most American bald eagles are Canadian. Because after their populations were wiped out by DDT, the breeding programs used Canadian birds to reestablish the populations.
Smarty pants. And the bald eagle capital of the world, Brackendale, just north of Squamish. But you already knew that.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. See you then.